My family and I recently moved into a new home, and when I saw this little space off of the kitchen, I immediately pictured a wall to wall bench. I wanted to make it cozy, comfortable, and functional, the kind of spot that just invites you to sit down with a cup of coffee. Before you say anything about blocking the windows, we already have outdoor furniture on the deck that blocks them a bit, anyways, so this bench was definitely happening. For the design, I decided to build the bench completely from scratch so it would fit perfectly into the space. I used our dining chairs, which are so comfortable, as a starting point for the dimensions. Once I had my measurements, it was time to get to work. I don't feel comfortable cutting full sheets of plywood on my table saw by myself, so I used a piece of insulation board as a cutting surface. I laid the plywood right on top and used a rip cut guide with my circular saw to make the cuts. After ripping the sheets down to the right width, I cut 10 pieces to the height of the bench supports. Quick tip: if you tape your cut line with painter's tape, it helps prevent tear out and keeps the plywood edge nice and clean. To make the bench sturdy, I doubled up the plywood for extra strength. I made 3 supports, which will be the center supports for the bench, by gluing 2 pieces of plywood together. I added a few brad nails to hold everything while the glue dried. Using a single piece of plywood, I created a template for the bench supports. I marked my cut lines based on the dimensions I took from our dining chairs, then used a circular saw and a straight edge to make the cuts. Once the template was ready, I traced it onto the plywood and cut out all of the center supports and one more single piece of plywood using my circular saw and finished the cuts with a jigsaw. To hide those raw plywood edges and give the supports a cleaner look, I glued and nailed 1x2 poplar boards along the front and back. I then used my router with a flush cut bit to even it all out and a round over bit to soften the edges. For the end supports, I attached one of the cut pieces to a solid sheet of plywood and trimmed the exposed edges again with 1x2s. Once everything was assembled, I patched the seams with wood filler and sanded them smooth. To give the bench seat a little extra support, I added 1x2s to the support pieces. This also gave me a larger surface to attach the bench seat to. This bench is huge, so I decided to assemble it right in the dining nook. There's no way I'm moving this once it's built. I placed the supports where they needed to be and secured the bench seat with screws, using a countersink bit so that the screw heads were slightly recessed. Then I added the back panel, securing it with wood glue and brad nails. I intentionally left a few pieces of trim off of the supports so I could add them after the bench seat and back were installed. The final piece was the top trim, and it really gave the bench a nice finished look. Once the bench was fully assembled, I filled the nail holes, caulked the seams, and primed the bench. For the paint, I went with a sleek black enamel finish, and honestly, it completely transformed the look. But I couldn't stop there. That old chandelier above the table had to go. We bumped our heads on it more times than I can count. I swapped it out for something simple, modern, and much more my style. With the new light fixture in, I added a few finishing touches to pull everything together. I ordered custom foam for the seat, and my mom made the most perfect cushion covers and pillows. This dining space turned out even better than I imagined. It's warm, cozy, and perfect for family dinners or hosting friends. And here's my favorite part. Instead of one big table, I went with 2 smaller ones. It makes the space so flexible. We can keep them separate for everyday meals or slide them together when we want a big family table. What started as an awkward little nook has become one of my favorite spots in our home. It's proof that with a little imagination and a lot of sawdust, you can turn any blank space into something special. Be sure to follow along as I continue to transform our new home. The kitchen makeover is up next.